everybody. Welcome to another episode of Shooting the Shift. That's Matt.
Hey.
That's a weird kid with a mullet.
Hello.
That guy is an arsehole. So if anyone wants to know, basically, Milton shafted the first recording of this in about 10 seconds of the opening intro. So he is an arsehole, as per usual.
You would never do something like that.
He does it every week, and you know he does it every week. Even when he just pulls his stupid little grin when he's going to try and do it. So, this week, we're not going to talk about everything that's wrong with Milton. We are going to talk about everything that's wrong with Formula One.
And over to Bryn, and we're just going to listen. So, put myself on mute.
So, interestingly, like during my research for this episode today, because I will hold my hands up and go, I have not watched Formula One for at least 4 years. Because
I guess I'm the only one that's. I guess I'm the only one that's still watching it then.
I tried to watch this, but I refuse to pay £18 a month for the channel. So I watched the highlights.
I would happily pay £18 a month if it wasn't nap-inducing.
Well, the first race of the season wasn't.
Yeah, but the first race of the season's had its issues anyway. Everyone was complaining about it. And then you look at like the fact that everybody just runs and tattletales to the FIA now when they find a way around the rules. It's not motorsport. They've stopped interpreting the rules. They're ratting on themselves.
It's because we said before, it's because of the money.
If you were sat in a competition and somebody was doing something that you thought they shouldn't be doing, would you go and tell the governing body?
No, I'd do the same thing and be just as competitive.
What if you couldn't or you didn't know how to?
Yeah.
Well, what happens is they go to the FIA. The FIA go, yes, that's legal, and then everybody else does it. It's easier for a team and cheaper to have for the FIA to turn around and go, that's not legal, take it off your car. And then the other teams don't have to do anything about it. That's why they do it that way.
Because my understanding is that's why Ferrari's losing at the moment. Because they managed to work out the interval at which the fuel rate was being monitored and then up the fuel rate in the period between.
Oh, yeah, there were loads of tricks like that even when I was working. For anyone that doesn't know, I worked in F1 briefly. There were loads of tricks like that.
Didn't you tune someone's car?
I did do some mapping that went onto Lewis Hamilton's car. I also did a piston that blew up, but that wasn't my fault, so that's fine.
So what's wrong with Formula One is that Bryn doesn't work in it anymore.
But no, there were.
Hang on, was that the year that Hamilton didn't win the championship?
I think he probably still won. It was that year.
What year was it?
2014.
No, he won that year. He won that year.
Yeah.
That was the first year, I think that's the first year he won with Mercedes, actually.
Is that from his car or?
We all got one of those the year that we won the championship, and it's lived there ever since.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice bit of memorabilia. But anyway, yeah, there were loads of little there's so many little rule breaks that I probably can't. Well, I wouldn't want to say all of them publicly anyway, but there are some good ones. But the fuel flow one's like an old one. When they first brought out that 100 kilo an hour limit, I think it was, or whatever the fuel flow limit was, I can't remember now. We were basically looking at it. There was an amount you could go over that per lap, and every time you did, it would tick a little flag up. And if you got a certain amount of those per lap, you were banned, or you qualified. But we worked out how many of those you were allowed, and that they got reset at the end of every lap. So we just used to go over it by that amount every lap. It's just
yeah.
And I bet that's what every other team does as well.
It's the thing though. If they say, okay, you're allowed to do this X amount of times in a race weekend, you'll do it exactly that amount of times.
No, you do it one more than that amount of times and see if they notice.
Oh, they'll notice.
They notice.
They don't even need to look. It's just open up files. How many flags does it take per lap? X. Disqualified.
Yep. All of the telemetry from the cars goes straight through the stewards and everything. They see all of it. In fact, the heads-up displays and things that you see on Sky are actually the real telemetry from the car because they have to be.
Yeah. Yeah, they use it for broadcasting in the FIA and the teams get it as well.
See, that is just like... A lot of me feels like the thing that's wrong with Formula One is the rules.
It's because it's the money. It's too much money. That's all it is.
Yeah, but it's not a prototype motorsport anymore. It's just...
I know what you mean.
Boring.
Well, that's one of the reasons they brought in all the rule changes for next year. That was supposed to be this year.
But that little cough bat thing. And back on topic with a swoosh.
One of the reasons they pushed those cars to next year is that. But, like, one of the things is that they're changing is they're going from I think it's 13-inch wheels to 18s. Like, what modern day car runs with 13-inch wheels? Yeah.
The tyres they've got really low profile, haven't they?
Yeah, so you go buy a modern MX-5, for example, and it comes on 17s now. Even the Mark 1 came on 14s.
Isn't that going to...
They're just not relevant.
Isn't that going to radically change how the suspension... Because a lot of the suspension is tyres, am I right?
Yeah,
so they have
I say suspension very loosely.
They have such a huge sidewall that it's forcing the teams to redesign all of their suspension, which, to be fair, ultimately is going to filter down to road cars because that's what all of the F1 tech does.
Not all of the F1 sponsors, though.
There's been some interesting sponsors out there.
There's been some completely fraudulent sponsors that have made teams go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Fake names and stuff.
Yeah,
Aston Martin it this year or is it next year?
This year.
Because it's
Martin are back as a
Vettel.
factory team.
It's Vettel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look, I'll watch it again when someone puts 6 wheels on a car again.
And that'll never happen again because it's in the regulations that all cars have to have 4 wheels.
Yeah, stuff like that won't happen because everybody's so good now. They have to regulate things really, really closely to keep...
It's got to a point where the FIA know to say your car has to have 4 wheels and stuff like that. So they know to put it in the rules. Otherwise, the teams will find a loophole. And they find a loophole every year without fail. Mercedes did it last year with their dual-axis steering.
Is
that the one where they pull it in to, say, toe out?
Yeah, they were just adjusting the toe with the steering column. It was a loophole in a way. I forget exactly what the technical ruling was on it. But it wasn't... It was a loophole that said it wasn't adjustable suspension. Because it was being done with the steering column.
Bryn, can we do that in drift cars?
Yeah, although...
Would you want to?
No, good luck making it reliable.
Too expensive.
Yeah.
But one of my favourite ones was the F-duct from a few years ago. So basically so anybody who doesn't know, what they had was channels running from the front wing through the centre of the car, out over the rear wing. And then there was a hole in the cockpit of the car. All the driver had to do going down the straight was cover that. And what it made is it made the rear wing stall. So you weren't producing drag down the straight, so you could go faster in a straight line. And movable aero parts are not allowed, and that's still true now, aside from the DRS wing. But that wasn't a movable aero part, so it was allowed. Wasn't it
Alonso that got them caught out because there was
So everybody knew about it, and the McLaren one was such a way it was only a slight movement for them to do it. But Alonso had to fully take his hand off the wheel and put it to one side and went, yeah, that's dangerous. Let's ban that.
Yeah, I remember because he was going around like Catalonia or something.
Yeah,
with one hand changing gear and blocking the ball.
Yeah, that was it. He was driving around a foot high-speed corner with one hand, with his hand over the thing. And that's why they banned it.
But like back in yonder days when men were men and gearboxes were H patterns, you have those videos of Senna sliding around Monaco.
In the wet, just like ran that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were going half the speed, and that was the only way they could change gear.
And they
But
put in
back
for a
then,
pit.
what they were doing to get cars under minimum weight was taking a pit stop right towards the end of the race, topping up some water, and filling the car full of lead shot so it could run underweight for the entire race.
Yeah.
Like, that was something they did. So
There's someone that did that. They used it as coolant. I remember there was a team. They said it.
Something like that.
It was a
But
coolant.
it
They
is-
said, yeah, because you're allowed to fit after the race. You're allowed to fill up oil and water and
Top
coolant.
some fluids up, and they were filling one of the fluids had lead shot in it.
Well, they just filled it up in general. They had like an extra overflow tank. So they left it empty for the beginning of the race, and then by the end of the race, they just topped it up with 5 litres of fluid, which is 5 kilos, which is a lot for them, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. One of my favourite rule bends that I don't know whether this ever properly came to light or not, but since Matt mentioned is one of my favourite one was, certainly back a long time ago, the amount of energy you were allowed to use was regulated. So they have the kinetic energy recovery system on the wheels, and then they have the one on the turbo as well. And you can only take a certain amount of energy from each one to charge up the battery. There is a limit. And the kinetic energy, the one on the brakes, was very, very easy to charge up the battery from that and use up your limit, and then you weren't allowed to do any more. But the turbo, there were very few situations when it was kind of freewheeling and you could take energy from it. So the loophole was the two were allowed to be connected, and there was no rule saying how much energy you could move from one to the other. So once you had finished the amount you were allowed to take out of the kinetic energy recovery system, what you would do on the brakes was use it to spool the turbo up directly and then take energy out of the turbo instead, and just use the turbo like a flywheel. And you could hear it when the cars were going past on the brakes. You could hear them going, wee, 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 and it was just spooling the turbo up and down and taking energy back out of the turbo. Genius. Absolutely genius.
Oh, no. So what? To use it like anti-lag?
No, not to use anti-lag, just because you were allowed to take energy out of the turbo and they couldn't take enough out. So they would just spool the turbo up unnecessarily so that they could take energy back out and charge the batteries.
So you're allowed to say like 20 kilos worth of energy, but the brakes produce 100, so they'd use 50 to charge up to spin the turbo up and then take 30 off of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So they'd go. That's clever.
Really clever, and it's things like that is what a lot of one rule breaking or rule bending is. It's people read the rules, work out what they haven't said you can't do, and then do it. But unfortunately, a lot of that doesn't really come to light for normal people. You don't get to see a lot of it.
It's one of the things I like about it is you've got to find the things that the rules don't say.
Okay, so I think I've fixed Formula One now, Bryn. Right.
Go on.
So the FIA in every race, there's a bit where the teams get to tell us what loopholes they've found. The FIA are not allowed to watch it.
That would be good.
And if anything disgusting, one of those ever comes to light to the FIA, they're not allowed to do anything about it.
Isn't that how a lot of like these things? The FIA don't usually find it. It's usually
Red Bull dobbed Ferrari in for the whole. So basically, what the Ferrari fuel pattern was doing was going blipping in to the right fuel flow rate, and then going out like massively in between, and that's how they were getting all the power on the straight.
We knew about that. The fuel flow meter that the FIA mandated on the cars is actually quite a slow refresh rate. Yeah. It was like a kilohertz or something. And we discovered that was probably what people were doing because we had fuel flow issues where it would constantly say we were using too much fuel and we weren't. And the problem was there was a resonance with their fuel flow meter. And we couldn't fix it because you can't put like a damper or anything in because that's illegal in the rules. But it was very clear that because this resonance existed, you could go the other way as well and you could probably cheat it. And we reckoned even back then Ferrari were doing that.
Yeah, but the thing is, you were in a team that it didn't matter to, which is why Red Bull were the ones that ultimately dobbed Ferrari in.
Well, it's very hard to prove these things. That's the problem.
But then Ferrari issue a statement going, we will now work with the FIA to help. That's not Ferrari.
Public relations. Yeah.
Enzo is rolling in his grave at that statement. Where's
Does he roll in his
Enzo's
grave
do
every time they
anything to
send a
win
cease and
attitude?
desist?
It's just poor. Just poor. Dobbing on the motorsport should be about interpreting the rules to the most devious of your abilities.
What, like, it's not Formula 1, but I think, if you've spoken about it, the rally, the Toyota and the rally car.
Don't get me on Toyota and rally cars and the new Yaris. You've got to feel for Toyota, right? They've just developed a 30 grand hot hatch for a homologization special that they now can't race the car for.
Why?
The Gazoo Racing Yaris was meant to be their new rally cars homologization special, and they've changed the rules in rally, and now they can't use it.
They're using it now, aren't they?
Not that I understand it.
I'm sure they are.
I was on about the
I could be wrong. I mean, I've just been slacking and watching Top Gear this evening from this season, so
I need to catch up. I was on about, they made a turbo inlet with silicone couplers, so when it squeezed, it moved it out, so 25% more air could get in, so they got like 50 more horsepower out of it. Because when they take it apart, it's the spacer that they asked for.
And that's the great thing about motorsport. It's interpreting the rules. The problem is when there's so many rules, it just gets boring. I would rather watch Formula E than F1.
No, there's too many street circuits for Formula E. It's all street circuits and it's all shit. You make one mistake and you crash.
I think you are talking to the wrong person about a dislike of street circuits.
You know when you go to a street circuit, you have big concrete walls down both sides where you clip an apex and you remove your front end.
But that adds to the risk.
That's fine, but when it's a season of 20-odd races and every single one of them is a street circuit, you've got to draw the line somewhere.
Like, I would hate to watch 20 Monacos.
That, and I haven't watched Formula E since they had 2 cars.
Yeah,
to a point where somebody damaged their suspension, took it to the pits, and then just hopped in the spare car.
That's comedy.
Like,
I love
that. We got a pit stop. Yeah, we've got the cars ready to go.
Didn't they used to not be able to charge, like they couldn't do a race either in the early days? So
that was the problem. So it's only the last two or 3 years, I think, that they've only had one car that could do the full race distance. The batteries weren't good enough to do the full race distance.
Yeah, so would you rather watch, right? Would you rather watch a race where there's a risk of someone ploughing into the wall and being a lot of excitement, or a health and safety exercise called Formula 1?
If I wanted to watch people crashing into walls, I'd go and watch NASCAR.
Or stadium super trucks. That's a good.
Yeah.
Oh my, they're different. That's not even. They are nuts. You see, and they're going 3-wheeler and going off a jump and then going 30 foot in the air, and then they come down and like this. And this is an actual footage in their car.
But this is my thing. We're all talking excitedly about these motorsports, yeah, and they are not as heavily regulated as F1.
Yeah, but you can't compare stadium super trucks because that is actually a spectator sport. It was created to advertise Baja truck racing.
I mean, we're talking about a racing series that has jumps in it.
Yeah.
They take a street circuit and put ramps in it.
It has a mandated yellow flag halfway through to bunch the pack back up for no other reason than to make sure they're all together again for the restart.
So far, we've come up with 3 ways to fix Formula 1. Number 1...
They do that in NASCAR as well.
I don't know.
Like a yellow flag to brunch. I know because cautions or mandatory cautions and stuff.
They probably don't need to in NASCAR because there's always some who's crap.
Just before we move on, speaking of weird yellow flags, the weirdest one I found is on Macau's street circuit. There's one corner on the circuit that's so tight that it's a permanent yellow flag. You're not allowed to overtake into it because you, with the amount of steering lock, at least with the World Touring cars, with the amount of steering lock they have, you cannot physically get another car through. The radius of the corner at the maximum is full lock.
I disagree with that statement.
Of course.
Okay, take one of the front wheel drive cars that doesn't have a handbrake and let me know how you get on.
Their problem.
That's their problem. Like,
Yeah.
is there anything?
Wheel drive?
Is there anything in the rules that say they can't fit a handbrake? Can you imagine that though? Just backing it in and backing it into.
I mean, probably not, but it's slow.
But is it though? Because
Is that the solution then? Fit hydro handbrakes to all Formula One cars?
Yeah.
Oh, now we're talking.
So right.
You
So
think
now,
of-
so now we've hit upon a few, right? First of all, the mid-season reveal, and the FAA aren't allowed to do anything about the rule breaks that are going on.
for that
Right.
season,
For that, no, ever.
no, that season we'll compromise. Go
No,
on.
ever
Next.
until they let six-wheel cars happen again.
So never.
So it gets to go on forever. We need jumps in the track.
Yeah, and at Monaco, the little first gear corner they do, there should be a rear clip on the outside, and if you hit that sideways, you get a full extra DRS zone.
Yep. And and
The Mario
in the
Kart.
middle of the race, which is now shorter because we all know that cricket got better when they took it from a 5-day sport to a 1-day sport.
Was cricket ever good to watch?
Not quite.
But it said it got better. I never said it got good.
Okay, can't get any worse.
Yeah. Can't get any worse by being shorter. It just means you've got to do all 5 days of drinking in 1 day to deal with it, right? So that, and then in the middle of every now shorter race, there's a yellow flag for a whole lap, so that it all bunches up.
That doesn't bunch them up.
Yeah, or you do it like stock cars, where you have a reverse grid, and if you are the fastest, you start at the back.
I'm into that. That
But
works.
speaking of that, so they've introduced this. I don't know whether it started this year or next year, and I think this is one of the things that's going to make it better. Is based on where you finish the season the previous year, dictates how much time you get for development. So your wind tunnel time, your CFD time, and all that. So basically, if you win, you get less time, and if you come last, you get twice as much time.
Now,
And I think that's going to help.
yeah, that is a good and bad thing, actually, and that's quite a good segue in a way. I kind of don't like that in a way, but I do in others. You have to do stuff like that to keep the racing equal. Completely agree. If people aren't doing as well, they need to be helped. But at the same time, for me, one of the most interesting things about Formula One, the reason I loved it was the technology, and that kills that in a lot of ways. Because if you're winning, you're artificially stagnated in what you can do. And so you got all these genius people that aren't actually going to be able to do all the things they want to explore.
I agree with you, because the other thing is it's not Mercedes' job to go slower and let everybody else catch up. It's everybody else's job to catch up. Mercedes are just the better team.
And you only achieve that by making it prototype racing again and going, yes, you can have 6 wheels.
Oh yeah, look how well prototype racing for the World Endurance Championship went.
Mazda, you are welcome to bring your rotary engine to Formula One.
I don't know if there's any rules against the rotary engineers, or does it have to?
Yeah, it specifies that they have to use a 1.6 litre V6.
Can you imagine a rotary Formula One car just screaming around the track for a moment?
Yeah, the Le Mans one.
Yeah, I don't know how it would ever be competitive again, because kind of the reason all of that ban happened is they completely misclassified the rotary. And so it got a huge advantage. And so it slayed everyone. And then they went, right, well, those are banned. But if they unbanned them, they'd have to try and work out how to make them competitive. And
well, that's part of the problem. It's like my RX-7 is either classed as a 1.3 or a 2.6. It depends who you speak to.
Isn't it in the logbook, or it's like 1.3, like the RX-8 is 1.3 or...
I've got the brochure from Mazda from 1989, and it says 652cc times 2, which is a 1.3. My logbook says 2.6, so the DVLA don't agree.
And if you ask our friend Nick, he will go, neither!
Yeah, so it depends who you ask.
Yeah.
But that's my point, right? So that would just be down to how whoever's running a rotary interprets those rules, right? And then in our mid-season reveal, well, if the FIA looked, actually, it's the 3 litre.
Actually, that's a point. Actually, because if you go and read the rules for Formula One, does it say you have to use pistons in your 1.6 litre V6?
I believe it does, yeah. But they'd be screwed by the fuel flow limits anyway, because
Yeah, true.
a rotary that was competitive would have to use too much fuel, and they'd never make it.
Especially if it had to be a V6 rotary.
Yeah.
Just
my
with
God.
with that little fuel.
It's,
There's no limits on how much oil you can burn, though.
there actually is, because Ferrari were burning oil as fuel.
Damn it, Steve. Ferrari worked out my idea.
But all of that came from them not being good enough without doing that, so they had to start cheating. And then you go back to Matt's thing of if they kind of get more time, then maybe they wouldn't have had to cheat. But at the same time, it kind of kills development a bit, because if the guys who are good aren't allowed to do good, then people don't find out about stuff and they don't get to do it, because it does trickle down eventually.
I have a question.
Go on.
So, using you as an example, Bryn, your work, you're salaried at the moment in your job to do 37.5 hours a week, right? How many hours a week do you do actually working?
What do you mean?
Well,
how much
how
time
many
do you
days-
spend singing and recording in the office?
no, not that, but actual engineering work. How long, when did you get home on time this week?
Yeah, well, I'm usually there for an extra hour or so a day.
Exactly. How would
They would have to mandate that you weren't allowed to do that.
FIA know?
Because
Yeah.
it's done. It's their wind tunnel time and their computer time. So the computer will have some sort of software that records how many minutes they use it for, and they probably have to have somebody from the
And that-
FIA there all the time or something.
But then you get to the point like where I used to work, who sold some machines to where Bryn used to work for a lot of money per machine.
Mhm.
But because of the overclocking, they can run the post qualification calculations twice as fast. So you can make
And so therein lies where the whole budget cap conversation comes through. Like,
Yeah, but
if you've got a shitload more money, you can go and buy a better PC that can utilize your time better.
No, different solution, not budget cap. Whatever you buy, technical equipment wise, if you find an advantage in that, you've got to buy it for the poorest team on the grid.
I like it.
So Mercedes will be working with Williams? Is Williams their sister? Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Well, Williams are the lowest team on the grid, them and Haas at the moment.
Yeah. So McLaren being the prime example who bought that £25,000 a piece machine. Yeah.
Did they have a
Would
G6
have to spend
or something?
every time they wanted. Would have to spend 75 grand, and this isn't me just being a salesman, because I don't work for that company anymore.
But use our name in a discount code. If you do spend £25,000,
We don't get a discount code from them, mate. Even
Yeah,
I don't
Lewis.
get a discount code. There's actually not a lot of gross margin in that 25 grand PC either. But
Are you essentially saying, though, that the FIA is now the teacher saying if you've brought in sweeties, you've got to give them to
Buy them for everyone.
I hope
Bryn,
you brought enough for
Bryn,
everyone.
the FIA is already the teacher saying that. I'm just making it more interesting when the teacher says that.
You're the one
What I'm
bringing in sour
saying
sweets, aren't you?
No, what I'm saying is right. The FIA is now becoming the teacher that says, well, if you've brought a submachine gun to the school, you better share one with that kid over there as well. Give it to the quiet kid in the corner.
The one that's shaking and drawing pictures.
Yeah.
So, circling back to the actual topic, a lot of what people say is wrong with F1 at the moment is the fact that nobody can overtake.
I have a way to fix that.
Oh, God.
Grappling hooks.
No, it's not. It's to do with the aero.
Yeah. So this is part and parcel of why the rule changes are coming in next year and why they're so drastic is because the front wings, I think it's down to the front wings, generate so much
Grip.
wake
Look.
as they drive along and they're so sensitive so that what happens is the next car comes along and there's basically no air there for them to create any downforce. So once you're within a second or so of the car in front, you just can't get any closer because there's no air there because they've displaced it all.
In which case, we need to go back to cigar cars.
Well, they kind of are. A lot of next year's rules are ground effect based so that they don't have to do as much disruptive aero and they can get the grip from ground effect, which is basically, it's not quite drag free, but it's drag free air, like drag free grip, they call it.
Wasn't ground effect just the words?
It was
physics.
The thing. It was
because they used a jet turbine, didn't they?
No.
That's a different thing.
That was ground effect, right?
No. So ground effect. Think back to I think it was Nigel Mansell's Turbo Williams. I think it was, and where they had the square chunky skirts that went all the way down to the floor, like literally dragged along the floor. So the idea of ground effect is you seal in the sides of the car, you channel the air underneath, and it has to stay under the car. It can't leak out of the sides like it can.
Wasn't
currently.
it had like plastic or something on it?
Yeah, that's why they were doing that. What ground effect is the closer you can get to the ground without actually touching it, the faster the air underneath the car has to be accelerated. So you look at all of the you remember when they had the really high front nose cars that were disgusting and ugly?
Yeah.
The whole idea of that is they were actually trying to get air under the car. They were scooping air in, and then you could close the gap when you get closer to the ground. It accelerates the air and sucks the car down, just like how a wing works, but opposite way round. And the closer you can get to the ground without touching it, the better the ground effect is, the more downforce you get. And the skirt thing, like Matt says, was part of that. It was, right, well, once we've got all that air under there, we don't want any of it getting out, so we're going to put the skirt
keep it under there.
But the problem with ground effect is, because it gets better and better the closer you get to the ground, everyone was getting closer and closer to the ground. As soon as the car touches the ground, you go from crazy amounts of downforce to fucking nothing.
Mainly because you hit the ground, your car comes up, and then all the air leaks outside.
Well, if you close it off as well, there's no air accelerating as soon as you hit the floor, and then there's no downforce. And then, like you say, the car bounces back up and it goes all over the place. So they just banned it. Whereas now I think they're just going to regulate it more and basically say, okay, guys, we're bringing ground effect back. Please be careful. Please, guys.
Is that what happened with the Jaguar in Le Mans?
That's
you know what I'm on about. The car that when going down the back straight over the crest, it happened with what's his face?
That was, you're thinking of David Coulthard in the Mercedes. That was
the Australian guy. Used to be Red Bull.
Yeah,
Mark
David
Webber.
Coulthard. He's
Mark
no,
Webber.
it was Coulthard. It was Coulthard in a Mercedes. Basically, that's to do with the flat floor. So, and this happened with the GTR at the Nürburgring as well. And basically, you come over a crest, the front of the nose lifts up, and because you're doing 200 miles an hour, 200 miles an hour of air hits what is basically a sail, and the car goes up. And it's why, if you look at current Le Mans cars, they all have holes on the top of their front arches so that can't happen.
No, it was definitely Mark Webber who was on about.
Was it?
It might have been. I'm sure it was a Mercedes, though.
There's a few of them. There's a few cases of that happening.
And it's a Porsche as well. It wasn't a Mercedes.
What? No, there was a Mercedes.
No,
yeah, I know the Mercedes video. That there was one that did it. It was just one of the CLK GTRs.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking of.
I remember an interview on Top Gear ages ago of a driver just turning around and saying,
"Yeah, that's one
of the Nürburgring that when he parked his car in a tree because of a similar effect."
Yeah, it does happen. But so anyway, that's they're trying to change the rules to get rid of all these wake problems and bring overtaking back.
And I think I saw some statistics that said it was between like 60 and 80% better. And I think they may have designed the car in just the way that all the wake, they've just designed it to throw it up in the air rather than come straight out the back.
My fix though is because it's the problem with it's not just the arrow, it's because that open wheel. Any open wheel racing always brings that case.
I think they're going back to wheel covers as well, actually.
Mm.
Because if you look at like even stock cars, like racing on dirt ovals, they've got huge side things, and then they've got the front. As soon as the front wheels start getting in each other, it causes no end of problems.
You are right though, because if I remember rightly, I know at least on the front wheels they have like little like winglets over the top of the wheels, and I think that is what that's for, to sort of cool the air that sort of comes off the wheels.
Well, I think Milton means more sort of the danger aspect, like when they're
of them touch
and it's screwed.
It's usually front wheel and rear wheel. Say you're going around the outside, and then they get caught.
Yeah, and they launch themselves.
Yeah, say the outside driver drives into the front wheel of the other car.
Mm.
Look at touring cars. So how they.
Then there's the other question: is the car, although we've increased safety a lot, is the car that fragile that drivers are too scared to go for the overtake? Is it the overtaking's not down to downforce, which I guess we'll find out next season, whether or not anyone's got any stones left.
It's also because of tyres and fuel. They're limited on how much fuel they can use. And they lose so much time in the pits. Everyone's trying to make...
They don't lose that much time anymore. They're like 20-second pit stops. But tyre strategy is part and parcel of the race, isn't it? Mm. What everybody forgets is Formula One is an endurance race. It's not a sprint race. So you go and look at the British touring cars, for example. They do 16 laps. And you put your fresh set of tyres on, you go as fast as possible for no time at all. And Formula One is between 40 and 80 laps. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Okay, so 50% of the season, Formula Sprint, not Formula One.
They have talked about sprint racing and having like Saturday sprint races and qualifying and stuff like that. But the other problem, and they've talked about reverse grids as well. And the other problem I have with reverse grids is if you go and look at a third race of a British touring car race meeting, it is absolute carnage because you've put the faster cars at the back. And they're all trying to come through at the same time, and they all just have crashes.
Yeah, but then also you've got British touring car drivers who aren't scared of trading paint.
Because they can
They have bumpers.
Yeah,
it's meant to be different though, and I'm not sure that is a good thing. That you wouldn't want Formula One to be like that. I don't think.
No,
I think I
and
would.
Quoting Hamilton and Vettel about the reverse grid, it's a load of bollocks. It's what they actually said in an interview about it.
You look at everybody moans about DRS making manufactured overtakes, but you go and look at touring cars, and they have success ballast as well as reverse grids and all that sort of stuff, which is manufactured racing. It's the same thing.
All right. Different solution. Everybody gets 100 shot of nitrous to use.
Yeah, but that's just DRS.
It's just KERS. KERS and DRS, just in a different format. And the other thing you've got is, in the world of Formula One, everybody, for the most part, has to make the bulk of the car themselves. There's certain parts that you can go and buy from other manufacturers.
The engine, isn't it? It's the
engine's one of them. Gearboxes. I think there's some standard parts across the entire field. But stuff like front wings and that sort of thing, every single team has to make themselves. Whereas you go to, and we go back to British touring cars as a good example, is you'll go to touring cars and there's 8 or so Civics on the grid, and they all come from one manufacturer, and they build the cars and then go, here's your car, you can tune it how you like. Mm. And they're the same car. You can't go out, if you want to go make a Formula One team tomorrow, you can't go to Mercedes and go, right, I want to buy your car and we want to run the same car as you this year.
No,
you can't. You have to make your own chassis and you have to make your own car. And that's why there's so much difference between the front and the back team.
Mm. And unless you're whoever it was, Racing Point, and you just sort of hold the tracing paper up to the screen and go,
You say that, though. That's not illegal.
No, and it's good.
They're allowed to.
Did they actually do that? Or...
Essentially, yeah. If you go and look at last year's... so it was the 2020 Racing Point, and then compare that to the 2019 Mercedes, they are incredibly similar. And it's completely allowed. You go and look at you can see the outside of somebody's car on the TV, and they go,
Bryn,
that works. Why don't we make that?
Didn't they try and get it banned as intellectual property or something? Is that the right?
See, from a team that's winning at the front of the grid to turn around to a team that's at the back of the grid and go, "Oh, infringed our intellectual property." That's just boring. Grow up.
I don't know if
issue with it.
Grow up.
Yeah,
Stop being a pansy. Let them have it.
So what happened was Mercedes had no issue with it. They were like, we didn't supply them with any of the drawings. That's on them. We didn't supply them with
any of the drawings on it.
So the reason they got penalised was because at the start of 2020, the rules changed that you weren't allowed to buy brake ducts from another team.
Mm.
The year before that was allowed, and what Racing Point had done is bought brake duct designs from Mercedes, and at the end of 2018, at the start of 2019, they only put the front brake duct design on the car and didn't use the rears. At the start of 2020, they took the designs from end of 2018 when they bought them legally and put them on the car. That was the only thing they could do them for, because technically that wasn't allowed, because they bought them. Because they didn't use them. They weren't allowed to use them in 2020.
Oh, didn't other teams complain? Or they did it.
Red Bull and Renault, I think, were the biggest voices in it.
Surprise,
and they were trying to get
running and ratting on people again.
Yeah. But
seeing a theme developing here.
But they were trying to get them for copying the Mercedes car, and the FIA went, no, that's legal.
Good.
So they had to do them on a technical thing, and that was the only thing they could do them
But
for.
they didn't have to do them on a technical thing. They didn't
They
have
threw
to.
They threw all their toys out the pram like they normally do.
Yeah.
But this is my point about it. The simple fact of the matter is, right, for some reason, all the people who run F1 teams are the kind of people who got participation trophies at school and now aren't happy when someone's doing better than them.
No, well, it's not that. It's that it's proper serious for them. Like, these people, it is everything.
It's money.
It's money, and it seriously is everything. Like, when I was working at Merck, and the reason that I'm not now is because it has to be your life to do well at it. It is a long working day on your contract, and you're expected to do overtime, and you want to do overtime because it's your passion. If you work in F1, that is the thing you care about more than anything else for the most part. So when something like that happens and these guys feel they're being hard done by, it is serious to them, because it's 500 people that it affects who all really, really want to win.
And the other thing is it's not a case of, oh, they found a loophole. It's a case of they're cheating. Why are they allowed to get away with that?
Yeah,
and that's the perspective of the other teams. What they see it as is the other team is cheating.
There is a very important difference between cheating and interpreting the rules differently.
Yeah, and that's why they throw the toys out the pram, because there is a difference, and that all comes down to this kind of how regulated it is. Because if you've made the fastest car you think you can make in the rules, and somebody else does something and they're now faster, and that you don't think that's allowed, it's not like you can just work harder and do something else, because you're already at the limits of what you think you can do. So they have to just say, no, that's an unfair advantage.
And the other thing I would want to point out is what usually happens is the team will do something, Red Bull will go to the FIA and go, okay, they're doing this. Is this allowed? And they'll ask the FIA for clarification. But the way that it's portrayed in the media is them throwing their toys out the pram. They're not allowed to do that. Why are they allowed to do that? Complain. And the reality is they're just going to the FIA and go, are they allowed to do that? And the FIA will go, yes, okay. And then the Red Bull will go and copy it, like with the double diffusers from 2009.
It was the Brawn cars, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Brawn.
It was,
like 2009.
2009, yeah.
And the FIA went, yes, that's allowed. So all the other teams copied them.
And then at the end of the year, they said, no, it's not allowed anymore.
And they and that's what they did with the DAS system from last year. They went, the FIA went, yes, that's allowed, but from next year, it's not allowed.
Yeah, we're going to close that loophole because we weren't really intending it to be there.
Yeah.
A lot of
And that's
championships
what they
do that
do.
with various things, don't they?
And that's why the Formula One rules and regulations have got to a point where they have, because up until I think it was Tyrrell turned up with their 6-wheel car, the rules didn't say you weren't allowed to have 6 wheels. So they and from that point onwards, the rules said you had to have 4 wheels on your car. It's just the way it works. And the same, I think the fan car was the same.
That's also, yeah. There's no rules against it.
Yeah, if there's no rules against it, a Formula One team will do it.
Yeah, and that one was a bit of a loophole trying to find the cheat. I think cooling fans were allowed at the time, and they basically
That's what it was.
Is cooling fan for cool car. Don't look where air come from. Cooling fan.
Yeah, it was. If I remember right, it was to amplify the ground effect.
Oh, that's what it massively did it.
Pull the air through. But they put it down as a cooling fan, and if it was cooling, it was allowed. I don't think it actually saw much racing in the end.
No, it got banned
pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah, I think it won 1 race in that, and then they went, "Yeah, no, that's not allowed."
It won it by like 3 laps or something silly. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But one thing I don't know the answer to this. I genuinely don't. This is like a kind of a wider question for anyone who's watching and wants to think about this themselves, right? We complain that the racing and stuff, it's too regulated and racing's boring and it's all manufactured over and stuff. But is it actually, if you genuinely look back at what I would say the glory days of F1, and I'm sure everyone else agrees, when the rules were quite lax because their teams were like 25, 30 people max. And you'd see the old footage of the garages and Williams would turn up with this crazy Formula One car and a bunch of deck chairs and stuff. And that was your team. Because people hadn't worked that stuff out and there weren't many of them, everyone was doing all sorts of crazy stuff. But was the racing actually better, or were there still just 4 cars that had worked out something good and overtook everyone?
I think there's a lot of nostalgia and rose-tinted glasses for this.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think in that atmosphere there is a greater chance of the underdog just coming up with something, for example, Tyrrell in the 6-wheeler. Yeah? The underdog the plucky underdog comes up with an idea that the big boys are going, no, we don't need to do that. We've got more power. Yeah? And suddenly they've got an advantage. And that, as a prototype sport, that drives things forward.
That's what Braun did in 2009.
Yeah.
And do you remember the cars that had the wings that were like that? By the cockpits?
X-wings.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think what we actually need to do is make it less about the money. Bring back the whole concept that you used to have. And this is probably too old. It's too old for me. The only reason I remember this era of racing is because I was brought up watching videotapes, really importantly, of Niki Lauda racing James Hunt. And that concept of that professional racer racing what was essentially a gentleman racer having a bit of a laugh. Yeah? We need that back. We need someone in the sport who is just bonkers, right? And is living on that little bit of land between crashing constantly.
I think part of what has changed more recently is they have a lot lot of sponsor commitments.
It's
but all the
contract.
sponsors are fake anyway. We've been over that.
So the drivers have to present for years and years now. They had to present themselves in a certain way and do certain things and only say certain things and all the rest of it. Blah 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 blah. But you look at the last year is a good example when you had the likes of Lando Norris, George Russell, and Leclerc. All they were streaming online, and you see a lot of their personality come out. I
don't think it was Leclerc. There was another. It was one of the three that came up. George Russell, Norris, and
Russell, Norris, Leclerc, and I think Albon was part of it.
It was Albon.
And those four were streaming, and you could see it in media interviews that there's a lot more of their personality coming out, and it's refreshing to see because you get to see them rather than what the team wants them to look like.
I think as you remove personality from the sport, it naturally loses a little bit of soul, right?
Because I really supported Hamilton. I still like Hamilton now.
I've for quite a while just got this weird feeling that Hamilton's just a little bit of an arrogant arsehole.
It's because he's so sheltered now. Before he was the underdog, but now I'm really liking Norris and Russell. But that's because they're current and they're with the times.
And that's what I mean. There's a lot more of their personality out there.
There was a video, I don't know if it was Formula 1 that did it, but there was all three of them, Norris, Russell and Albon, and they was like doing jokes and like videos.
I think it was a Formula 1 thing at the end of all of their first year, their rookie seasons.
Yeah, and how they take the mick
like
of who get the best starts and who got the most points. And do you remember when you spun out? And also
that's all starting to come through with these newer drivers.
Was it last year there was a race that was rained out, or like it was meant to be qualifying, but it was just torrential floods. So Norris started live streaming, and then he got told off because he was still in race conditions.
Something like that, yeah.
Who was Who was the first one to come out and kind of break that mold? Was Daniel Ricciardo. And I remember, because I was still watching F1 with my parents at that point, I think. And because they religiously watch it. And I swear I remember him coming in and being like, yeah, this guy's going to change things. Like, he's got personality.
Yeah. And you see...
when he does a shoey...
And a good example of this is you look at Sebastian Vettel in the world of Formula 1 and you go back to when he was at Red Bull. And he was an extremely unlikable character because of the way he was, and he was winning all the time, and that came across. But then I watched him on an interview on Top Gear, and he's himself there. He's not what I want him to be, and he's an extremely likable person in that scenario.
It's work.
When he's not in the world of Formula 1.
Look at last year. He was not just racing driver. He was a strategist, engineer, wasn't he? Was it last year F1?
Yeah. When he was
Ferrari.
But last year, he wasn't restricted by what Ferrari told him to do because he was leaving the team, so he did whatever he wanted to.
No, was it the year before that when he wasn't leaving, but he's like, so do I stay on these tyres? And then he better to go back to the engineers and go, I don't know, you're meant to be telling me this.
So I think where we've fundamentally where we've got to is slightly less rules for slightly more creativity. Rotaries in F1. Jumps in F1. Yellow flag. Formula 1 sprinting. And let drivers show their soul out. Like, just let them have some personality.
Like berms and stuff.
Yeah. Full on ski jump in an F1 car.
Can you imagine Monaco? But you know when they're going through the tunnel, instead of they go like that, they go up the side of it and back down.
Yeah.
Like as an option.
Yeah, you have
to
be going fast enough for the G-force to press you into the wall, or you just get disqualified.
I think Red Bull has said that they know their car can drive upside down.
Oh, they've been saying that for years, and everybody says that, but there's no way of proving it.
I mean, there is a way of proving it.
Yeah, you can prove it very easily. They know they make more G of downforce. That's all it requires. If you make more than 1 G of downforce, you can stick to the roof, technically.
So,
yeah, but until they do it, I'm not believing it.
So going back to the whole rules thing, I don't think the problem is there's too many rules. I think the problem is that the rules aren't enforced consistently. So we're getting away from technical regulations, I think it is, to sporting regulations. And this is part of the reason that everybody was hating on the first Formula 1 race of the year. And I'm going to say it because it's going to be track limits. And the biggest problem is everybody knows the white line is the edge of the track. And Formula 1 drivers will run wide every opportunity they can because it will let them go faster because they can make the track wider and make the corner less acute. But what happens is the FIA say, well, we're not going to monitor track limits here, but we are here. And then between sessions, so Friday practice, you can run wide here, but come qualifying, you can't run wide here. And then by the race, you can run wide here again. And that was part of the problem. They're just not consistent with it at all.
And some drivers are doing it and some weren't.
And that's what happened at the weekend. So the rules say you can't run wide and gain a lasting advantage. And then what happened was that changed between sessions. But what happened was they said, okay, I think it was turn 4. They said, we're not going to monitor this. Do whatever you like. So Hamilton was running wide for 30 laps constantly. And that was fine because that's what they said. And then after 30 laps, I think the FIA said, well, actually, he's running so wide now. Like, he's not just a little bit wide. He's very wide. He's gaining a lasting advantage. Rein it in a little bit. But what actually happened with the overtake, and the reason that Verstappen had to give it back, was he overtook on the outside of the circuit, off the track, further wide than Hamilton was. And that gained a lasting advantage because he gained a place. But then at the end of the day, that is against the rules.
Yeah, but then you're just getting into the semantics of who's using the track in what way, right? We are not getting in, and I'm fine with the rules of how you can use the track. What I think is fundamentally boring is banning the creativity that we used to see. As you guys said,
overtaking somebody illegally is not.
Yeah, but I've just said I'm not calling that creativity, Matt. Listen to the words coming out of my mouth. I'm talking about the technical creation of the vehicle itself that can be far more creative and far more prototype whilst maintaining the regulation of how it is used on the track. If you see some variance in the design of the vehicle, it is a prototype motorsport.
What I would like to see more, maybe, because they're all limited to 2 cars per team, aren't they?
Yeah.
Maybe, like, I would like more teams to join together and have...
Not
yes, you could have different... Because you can imagine that way it'd also save on budget, wouldn't it?
6 cars per team, but you're only allowed 2 cars of each design, and you've got to pick which one's right for the race weekend.
That's cool.
What
was that, mate?
Oh, I smelt burning. I was checking I wasn't having a stroke.
Checking your house wasn't on fire.
And that's it's my thing that I think makes I'm not bothered about the rules about how you use the track. I get that if you go off the track, you gain an advantage, and that's not right. That is cheating. What's not cheating is as long as limit the engine litre size, but don't say it has to be a V6. If someone wants to build a straight 6, then let it happen.
Do you think there should be a power limit? Like, you're only allowed to have 600 horsepower?
Well, there kind of is because of the fuel flow limit. Ultimately, that limits the power. Like, I remember in 2015 or whatever, there was this whole thing of people saying, oh, well, we could make it more interesting by making the cars, like, what if they had 1,000 horsepower? And the answer was, yeah, we do. Like, this engine will make 1,200 horsepower if it's not limited to that fuel flow. Like, so there is a power limit ultimately by that fuel limit.
But is it that it's 1.6? Sorry, Matt, go on.
No, I was only going to say, look, if you go and to speak to Formula One fans, the issue they have with the sport is the lack of overtaking, the lack of exciting racing. And aside from the whole endurance race side of things, that comes down to the whole aerodynamics package and whatnot. A lot of people don't care that they're not allowed to do prototyping and they're not allowed to do inventive stuff and all that sort of stuff. They just want to see exciting racing.
Yeah,
but exciting racing comes from that prototyping.
Well, it's two schools of thought, isn't it? It's some people, like Matt says, it's all about the racing, and you want to make it even so it's the best driver and all that stuff. Whereas I am in the camp of whoever's got the best car, like, I want to see them doing sick because I want to see the craziest things people can come up with, and the two are not. They don't really work together a lot of the time. So
that's what I'm trying to say. Because the other thing is, if you let them do whatever they like and do prototype stuff, what you'll get is one team that comes up with the thing, and it'll be 5 seconds faster than everybody else. And what you'll get for the entire season is them leading by 5 seconds every single race.
Yeah, but then the next season, everybody comes up with a thing to beat that, right?
No,
Or
because they
it'll
all
be-
come up with the same thing. We're at a point now where technology is at such a place that we know all these things, so we know exactly what we should be doing.
No, we're at a point right now where F1 technology is so limited by the rules that no one can create the new thing.
But
Same thing.
You have to do both. That's the thing. If they don't do those limitations, you still end up with all of the cars being about the same to a degree. You know, if you had unlimited time, everybody would come to the same solution. But they'd just be crazy, stupid, fast and expensive. So it's the thing that the FIA have really always going to struggle with is drawing the line to try and rein it in without reining it in too much. And they're never going to get it right. They just aren't.
I genuinely think racing was more interesting when there was more prototype madness going on.
Yeah. I agree with you. But like Matt says, like we're at the point now where we kind of know so many things. If you have 500 odd people in every team and the amount we all know, you kind of the next big breakthrough is so much harder to get now. Whereas back in the early days when it was small teams and people didn't understand, prototype racing was genuinely better because someone would come up with a mad thing that nobody'd ever thought of every 5 minutes. And some of them worked and some of them really didn't. But that kind of doesn't happen now.
Because you go back...
Milton got the popcorn out for the moment that me and Matt start tearing strips off each other over prototype versus driver racing.
But Bryn is right. If you go back to where Formula One started, we were front-engined.
Yeah.
And one person went, okay, what if we put the engine in the middle? And then the car handles better. And then everyone went, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And then they all do that from now on. And that's what's happened is somebody's gone, oh, we need a front wing. We can make more downforce. Okay. Everybody's gone, yes, that works. Let's all do that from now on. And they've done it with the rear wing and so on and so forth. To a point now where there's so little new things we can do without becoming a full-on LMP1 car that if you go much further than this and give them maximum freedom, you end up in a different racing series altogether.
There is another thing.
But you don't end up in a different racing series altogether because the teams advance at more or less the same pace. There will inevitably be one team that's got an advantage any year.
No, because look at the lowest
Look at the budgets.
Haas. They're not going to be able to afford to put as much R&D in as Mercedes are.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily in that prototype space. They don't necessarily need to put the money in. They need to put the money in one place. One place can give you that 5-second advantage. For example, the 6-wheel Tyrrell car that gave them more grip at the front end and let them corner faster.
Yeah, but like...
Look at, what was it? Formula E, they've got the fan of...
Or a Ferrari car, which now doesn't have its sudden blips of increased fuel rate and is, like, dropped from second, third on the at pace down to 6th.
Yeah, but that was them just cheating the rules anyway.
I was interpreting the rules. We're going to test your fuel rate at this frequency.
What's
and more importantly, Bryn, how long ago were you working for McLaren?
Mercedes and 2014.
And sorry, for Mercedes. And knowing in 2014 that Ferrari were doing that, did it bother you as another team?
Oh yeah, we were trying to work out how we could do it. Let's do it.
And there's my point, right? So that creativity of interpreting the rules gave you a competitor that you had something to aspire towards.
A competitor that was cheating.
Yeah.
Interpreting the rules, Matthew.
Cheating. But at the end of the day, not every team is going to come up with the same thing in the same amount of time. Because I'm looking at a graph with estimated budget in millions of US dollars.
Yep.
And it's old because Caterham and Marussia are still here. But Red Bull is just over 500 million. And Marussia there's probably about 80 million. So it's going to take them at least 5 times as long to do anything that Red Bull was doing in this particular year.
See, I think this is probably, and I probably differ on this school of thought because of the era of F1 I grew up in and that had just preceded me growing up and what I was shown videos of, right? Hesketh were not a rich team. Hesketh won races because they had a bloody good driver who had a massive pair of stones. And Ferrari did good because Niki Lauda was a very precise driver, very technically minded man. Now, those two teams, the budgets that they possessed were massively different.
Yeah, but that's because back in them days they had lots of budgets, but they didn't have the knowledge that everybody does now. I mean, that was the same kind of era where you started getting the ground effect cars, and Williams did a test where they took a car to the track and they took all of the shocks off and replaced it with bits of steel bar and went, right, it's got no suspension now. I bet it'll be well fast. And they came back in, did the test, and the guy basically came back in and went, yeah, but that's undrivable because it's got no suspension. They tested that. Nowadays, everyone's going to go, well, yeah, not having suspension. It's stupid because we know that. But that's the kind of thing they were doing. And the car that came out where they had a CVT gearbox, everyone else was at H patterns, and they were like, "What if we just have one gear? We have a CVT in it." And it was, you just get those completely off the wall ideas where some mad bastard goes, "Let's take the shocks off, boys."
Yeah, no, but that's my point. I think you'd still get that.
Bryn, can you go tell that to all the Honda owners and slammed cars?
They haven't got ground effect. Not one of them's got a ground effect. Wandering along, this different.
So I think actually, you know, getting into the end of the episode now because we're running out of time for how long people watch us. Basically.
Can I say my point now, Bam, or are you going to interrupt me?
I might just cut it off and not let you say it in the whole video, mate.
That's it. End of the episode right now.
Yeah.
Cut.
Go on, Milton, you can make your point, but if it involves the word explosion, the next time we see you, I am going to tap the tip harder than I've ever tapped the tip before.
No, it was a serious thing.
Explosion.
The same rule applies to everybody.
I'm just waiting for the swoosh to come in. No,
so, Milton, what was the point you wanted to make, mate?
Formula E, they have the fan of the car driver of the day or something.
Yeah.
Boost.
They got an extra battery or something, didn't they? Matt, you might know.
So
What
a
is
few
it?
seconds of boost.
Yeah, they got they got a little bit of boost or more power. That's just, I think that then encouraged the drivers to be more reactive with fans and stuff.
That has given me an idea, and we've touched upon this in another episode previously, right? No, Bryn, you know you're loving my ideas so far. I've come up with some good ones, right? Ski jumping F1 cars is one of my better ideas, and you know it.
Go on then.
Right. So, one race of the season, the top of the championship board's cars get given to the bottom of the championship board's cars, and you swap them all over through.
I mean, Russell did that last year.
And he almost won if he didn't get screwed over by pit stop mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not.
And ironically, a puncture from the guy who was driving his normal car.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the solution.
But it's double points.
They tried double points. It was a stupid idea.
That was a stupid idea.
Right, so we're back at where we started off, and six-wheel cars need to come back. That's how we fix F1.
Well, do you know what the actual solution is, Bam? Genuinely, as somebody who's still working
Shoot
in
Bernie Eccleston.
Well,
No.
I mean,
He's not in charge anymore, is he? No, he's not.
Go on, Bryn.
So the Americans are in charge now.
Shoot the Americans. Oh,
yeah.
Have I just declared war in America? Was that a bad plan?
Trump's
Go on,
not in charge anymore.
Bryn, you know how to fix it.
But look, I'm someone's still working in motorsport now, this idea of like take the regulations away and everyone will find creative ways. No, we know far too much now for the creative ways. What you've actually got to do is take everyone who's ever had a motorsport background ever and ban them all from working in F1 and get complete amateurs and start again. That's the only way you're going to get interesting prototype racing. Is if anyone with prior knowledge, you are not allowed to work in F1. You're not allowed to talk to the F1 teams, and you start from there. I guarantee you will see some crazy.
So you go into all the F1 teams.
Wait, are me and Milton allowed to be in F1 teams under this rule?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So you go into all the teams, get all their files, go Control Delete. Control A, and delete, and then remove everybody from the building who's worked in Formula 1 before.
No, Matt has got it. Matt has actually got it, and I don't think we even need to get rid of the people who've worked in F1 before. We just need to delete 100 years of work from the machines, right? And go, do the maths again, but be ready for a season.
But this is kind of what we're getting next year with the new cars, because while they're loosely the same shape, a lot of what the cars are, the front wings, the rear wings, all of this, they've never used before. So they don't know what's good and what works.
Okay,
so... I've got a better idea.
Okay.
You get everyone's files, get them all copied onto one server, and then it's...
And you can use what you find.
Yeah, just take off all the trademarks, all the names, and then it's like the Hunger Games. And you go in, you're not allowed to Control A cut. You've got to go in. You're allowed to grab stuff one at a time, randomly.
Okay. I'm gonna take Milton's idea and run with it, because I don't think if you copied all the files and you gave everybody all the files, that would be bad, because we'd just end up
filled with the same car.
Now, Matt's right. The way that they chop up the regulations, that's them trying to do this thing of bringing in stuff that we've never done, so that the knowledge won't necessarily be there because these people won't have thought about it. All right, let's combine the two. So we do put all the files on the server, okay? And we're going to retain 5 to 10% of them only. And you don't know which. That's where the Hunger Games thing comes in, right? You have a Crystal Maze style, like 60 seconds to grab randomly some of the things we know, and then the rest are lost forever. So we won't start on day 0. We won't start in the Dark Ages. The cars will have a little bit of fast stuff on them, but most of it...
And then say if Haas are really struggling, they get slipped a file.
Yes!
And it's done by the FI, the constructor that's in the...
There is a special job at the FIA to be the guy who takes bribes, right?
The guy that goes...
Yeah. And all he does is he proportions the bribe you have to give him by the amount of funding your team has. So, Haas get away with £1, and Mercedes have to give him 10 billion.
Okay, but he's not allowed to actually give them a file, right? They don't get a file. What this guy does is just at some point on a race weekend, he'll just sort of sidle into the garage and gone, you guys ever thought about stacking an extra diffuser on top of that one? And then just walks away.
If that was me, Bryn, I would go into every garage every race weekend and go, have you not ever thought of 6 wheels?
So what you do is the car be sitting there, you just go, put another wheel there, another wheel, and just walk away.
Just walk away, yeah.
Like a full-sized wheel, just put it in.
And then, but that bit is televised, right, Bryn? And all it is the bearded weirdo section. And you just walk in, you put a part on the car in the place that the former tech's known to work, and you just leave and you see if they figure it out.
But the problem with that is you've just broadcast that on national TV, which is watched by every other team.
Okay. The TV doesn't actually show what the bearded weirdo says. He just puts the parts there and walks away, and then the TV will zoom in on the technical chief's face just to watch his reaction.
Yeah.
Watch his mind just get blown.
Yeah, but also, to avoid the problem that Matt's just described, throughout the season, In fact, ever, no one who works in F1 is allowed to watch a TV.
Oh.
Or on the internet. That
Well, you
means
could
they've got to
easily-
come up with all their own ideas themselves. They can't research it.
I've got another idea.
Yeah. Remove the internet connection from F1 team's headquarters.
Yeah.
You know how you can get what's that? Telegraphic. You can look through and then you could do augmented reality.
Do you know what
They
you
could
could
do that on the driver's helmet, and they'll be driving around, and then suddenly there'll be a Mario Kart box offline. And then
I think at this point we're miles off topic.
No, we are not miles off topic.
We're
fixing
miles off
F1.
reality at this point.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
not miles off reality. The bearded weirdo is a thing. I'll happily walk into F1 garages and plug bits of car next to their stuff.
Oh yeah, I believe you.
It's when
Just
I put. It's
walk-
when,
just
it's
keep
when
doing
you
it
go.
till you get
It's
sick
when
to
you
your
go.
car.
It's when they go in and there's just a turbo plunked on either side of the body.
No, you'll just walk up to the car and just put like a piece of paper and just go, and then just walk away.
There's just a little note, and every now and
nothing
again,
written on it,
every
just to
now and
show
again,
that
in the bearded weirdo section, I might just walk in, draw a schoolboy on a bit of paper, and leave it on the car.
Bryn, should I give them paint diagrams?
Oh, yeah, your paint diagram. I mean, now we really are miles off topic. But
So obviously, quick pee break as denoted by toilet flying across the screen with the transition. So where we're at, actually, is we need to completely reset technology. So if
They try to turn it.
if anyone does have a spare thermonuclear device, we'll detonate it in the atmosphere just above a couple of teams' headquarters to get the EMP, and we'll
Milton
wipe
Keynes.
everything they've got.
so what you're going to do is destroy Milton Keynes, which would be great anyway.
Less roundabouts.
If we do that anyway, we might get more cars from the 90s being built again in actual car factories.
Also, really importantly, I get to play with a really big bomb if we do that. And that'll
That's
make me
scary.
happy for at least
Join
5
us next
seconds.
week on Shooting the Shift if you've managed to get electricity in the small hovel that you're living in.
And if Bam hasn't been arrested by then for his
Yeah.
fun.
I mean,
Next week it's just the three of us.
no, I will be reporting to everyone live from Guantanamo Bay.
You won't be. No one will know you're there.
I'll sweet talk them into it. So anyway, this week we've I think we've fixed Formula One. Just reset it, put some ski jumps in,
Something like that.
take away all the rules.
Turn it off and on again.
Don't let
Just take
Matt
away all the
anywhere near the
knowledge.
rules.
Just take away all the knowledge and we'll be fine.
Yeah. And then go watch Stadium Super Trucks instead.
Exactly that. So the way we fix F1 is by nobody watching F1 anymore, and
I'm watching
we
our
will...
videos instead.
That what?
I'm watching our videos instead.
Yeah, that works.
Think that? Yeah.
Yeah, because even
Why
our
watch?
podcast, as boring as it can get for some people, apparently, is more interesting than the F1. In fact, Castaway, the film that I fall asleep to every time I try and watch it, is more interesting than F1.
Wow.
It's a boring film. And on that note, we've gone sufficiently off topic to wrap things up. I've been Bam. He's been Matt. He's been Milton. He's been wrong. And he's been Bryn.
Hi.
Wrong side, Milton.
Bryn's right. Milton was wrong.
So
Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next week.